Hello coders, today we're going to be talking about a fantastic resource for when you're learning programming and web development. I'm joined by Kimberley Cook from Codebar. Kimberley, how are you doing? Have you had a good week?
I have, and I'm good, thank you very much.
Excellent. So, you're a director at Codebar. Can you talk about what Codebar is?
So Copa is an organisation that runs free programming workshops for underrepresented people in tech. We started 5 years ago, and we've ran almost over 1,000 workshops since we started.
1,000 workshops in that space of time. That's incredible. So, where are these workshops?
So workshops happen all over the world. If you want workshops to start in your city, you can then start them, basically. It did start in London, so London happens to be our biggest chapter, but we now actually have 24 active chapters running around the world. And by chapter, I mean workshops in a city.
Right, okay. That's a crazy amount in that space of time. That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
We kind of never expected it to grow at this pace.
Right.
And it's kind of all happened really organically.
Yeah.
We started in London, and then someone from Brighton was coming up, and she was like, can I start one in Brighton? And we're like, we can see how this can grow. But we never actually actively went to like any city and started them. They did grow from people emailing us saying, we think these workshops are really cool. It really sucks that, diversity in tech. And so can I start a chapter in Barcelona?
Right.
Or, can I start one in Helsinki?
Yeah.
And then, we go through the process of setting those chapters up with them. And then before you know it, there are 24.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you're one of a few directors, right? So how many people are there who are directing this?
So we have 7 directors, all female programmers.
Right.
And actually most of us have started at Copa as students.
Okay.
So there was the one founder, Despo. She founded Copa. And then everybody else either was coaching. So I started coaching. And then some others came as students. And then, as you need more help, you bring extra people on.
Yeah.
And then, now we have 7 directors, all
that's
female
incredible.
Programmers.
That's incredible.
We think is sick.
Awesome. Yeah. May I ask what your background is in terms of the programming side?
Yeah, so I did a degree in Bournemouth. It was a Bachelor of Arts, actually. So it's not a science degree, but it did involve coding. And I actually loved my degree because it was kind of for someone who enjoyed the internet. They didn't really know what they wanted to do. So it was a broad set of skills from, building websites, building apps, gaming, 3D modeling for those games. But you also had to do all of the design elements to all of this, which is why it's a Bachelor of Arts.
Yeah.
And then from that, you then got to go into all of these different areas in tech. So from my degree, you have people who are app developers, web developers, project managers, designers. And then I realized that actually what I really enjoyed was the development side of things.
Yeah. And,
I have an eye for design, but if I try to do anything, it looks like a 12-year-old. So you really don't want me to do any designing. But I know what things work and what things don't. And so... Yeah, and so then after my degree, I went into a development agency called Pixeled Eggs. I was there for a few years.
Right.
And then from that, I just carried on my development career and realized that actually that was what I was better at.
Awesome. That sounds fantastic. So you've been at Codebar for several years. How did you start getting in? What was the thing that drove you to that?
So I was actually bouldering with a friend in London, and he was like, have you heard of this thing called Codebar? And I was like, no, what is this thing? Tell me.
Yeah.
And so he told me that, his friend had started this thing. I think it was a couple of months old at this time.
Right.
And that they were always looking for new coaches, particularly if you're a woman. And I was just like, and particularly in London, you're so busy that you're like, I'll try and fit this thing into my schedule. But the good thing is that these workshops are every single Wednesday in London. And so if I couldn't go one week, it was okay. Like I could just go the next week. Like you have no you're not signing on to this thing where you have to attend 6 weeks in a row. If you're free, you can go. And so I think after a few weeks, I eventually went, and then I started coaching. And then the thing I loved the most was just the enthusiasm from the students and also the coaches. Like every single person involved in Copa, even us directors, are volunteers. Right. And so you get this huge sense of just like excitement, enthusiasm. Yeah. And people do enjoy going, people make friends from it, and if you're new to London as well, like London can be really scary, daunting, and quite a lonely place as well. And actually you make some really good friends from it. I just kept going and kept attending. And now, 4 years later, I'm a director.
That's fantastic. That's such a great story from degree to director of one of the directors at Copa. That's crazy. That's really, really good. Hats off to you. What's your kind of day-to-day responsibilities of Codebar?
So they can vary depending on where we're at in the company. More recently it was filing a tax return. But currently at the moment we're actually going through the process of registering as a charity. Okay. So we met with a lawyer in October. And he sat us down and he explained to us all the things that we'd need to do if we wanted to become a charity. And actually we've been working with him to get that ball rolling. So a big part of what I'm doing at the moment is getting all the documentation ready for that, helping him put together our Constitution Act. You have to put together a business plan. Yep. And then also the day-to-day running of the workshops, because I'm currently in Canada, I don't actually go to any workshops at the moment. But that's good because it frees me up to do a bunch of other things. So, helping new chapters get set up. We had an email from someone in Milan a couple of weeks back saying they wanted to start one. So we're just getting the ball rolling with that. There's a few other chapters who are just starting out or about to have their first workshop. Right. So we're helping them. And then also we have 2 blogs that we maintain. So there's the code log, which is just our generic blog that has, some community bits if someone goes to a conference. And then we also have one called Codebar Stories, which is, we call it our gallery of people. And it's basically people who are now developers who have come through Codebar. And we just like to show off these awesome people that have also completely different backgrounds. No one's journey into tech is the same. We have people on there who used to be science teachers and they're now developers. And it's just to showcase to people that, you can change career at any point. No one's journey is the same. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to you don't have to go through a boot camp. No. So there's maintaining those. And then there's just a general helping of the chapters. We have 24 chapters. There are 80 volunteers running workshops. So you get a lot of questions. Yeah. And you just have to help people if they have questions. And so, there's a lot involved.
From listening to you, it sounds like you are getting a buzz just from talking about it. It's
I do.
It's like an addiction, right?
Yeah. I can get frustrated, right? But I don't think I could ever give it up.
No. Awesome. That's fantastic. And you said that you're in Canada at the moment, right?
Yes.
But you went to uni at Bournemouth, did you say?
Yes.
Bournemouth. So that's Bournemouth in the UK. Yep.
Yeah, so I am from the UK. I'm from Southampton. I studied in Bournemouth and then I moved to London and I was working in London for 5 years. And I realised that the job I was doing as a developer, I could do anywhere in the world. I have this huge privilege where the job that I do, all I really need is a laptop. And, the software out there nowadays, Slack, Google Hangouts, you can really work anywhere. And so 2.5 years ago, me and my boyfriend, we were like, shall we go and work in Berlin for 2 months, see what it's like? And we did it. We quit our full-time jobs and we both started contracting. And then we went to Berlin and then we've been constantly on the go now for 2.5 years.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
It was only actually today that I was speaking to my wife, and I said to her that I've spent more time in my professional career as a remote developer than I have actually been in an office, which was kind of a bit of a weird sort of realization.
Yeah, remote working does have its challenges. You're not always necessarily with a team, but actually the team that I'm with at the moment, I work for Hive. And I go back to London quite often. So, I actually went and spent 3 months in the summer there. So, I then go back into the team and it's really nice. We have 22 developers on the team. I think a third don't live in the UK. A couple that live in the UK, one's based in Brighton and he only comes to the office like 2 days a month. So actually the remote team there is really good. I had to say to them, do you mind me going to Canada? It is an 8-hour time difference. And they were like, we can make it work. It's fine. And so, I do get up for 6 a.m. meetings.
Sure.
But, and I'll have like, say, 4 hours of crossover with the UK. I can then go snowboarding for 2 hours. And then I have this peaceful afternoon where I know no one's going to talk to me on Slack because everyone's finished work, where I can get my head down and work.
You are living the dream.
Yeah, I am. And I know I am. And I feel very, very lucky.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah, there's definitely something. I know we're sort of diverging here, but there's definitely a thing about remote working when you are working in a different time zone, because you can actually get a lot of work done whilst the other team is asleep, and so you can get stuff ready and prepared for them when they need it. Yeah, and even with Copa, because we have workshops in New York, Sydney, actually the time zone in regards to Copa isn't a problem, because we now have workshops all around the world. I don't need to be in London for that either. You're global, aren't
so even
you?
that, and even with that now, I can schedule calls to people at different times. It's sometimes a bit easier than it is when I was based in London.
Awesome, that's fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about what someone can expect from going to one of these Codebar workshops. What is it that they will do when they go?
So one of the first things we ask people when they sign up is, what is it you want to learn? And the one option is, I don't know, I'm a complete beginner. You don't have to have a text editor. Right. And then if they have selected that, they'll come to the workshop, and the organisers signing in will just ask them a few questions. Some people want to come and they just want to learn a bit of HTML because they're a designer and they know that it will be able to enhance them as a designer. Some people who are product managers want to come and they want to bridge that gap between them and the designers. And developers, and some people do come because they want to be developers. And so the way the workshops operate is that you tell us what you want to learn. We'll pair you with someone else learning that same thing. Then you'll get assigned a coach. So it's 2 students to 1 coach is the ratio that we always try to go for.
Oh, that's awesome. That's I didn't realize that. So we realized quite early on that the teacher student format with one teacher stood at the front and then a classroom of 20 people is actually quite daunting, and if you have a question, and a lot of people feel that the questions that they have to ask are silly questions, and they're not. You're learning a new skill, whether it's coding or riding a bike, learning any new skill is hard. And so we realized that actually we preferred the more the smaller way of working, which is, 2 students to 1 coach. And then, when you're only asking this question in front of someone else who is also learning exactly the same thing as you, they may have been thinking that same thing as well. And so no question is stupid. Yeah, I sniggered then, because that is exactly how I felt when I started. When I got into the industry, it was like, oh, great. Now I've got this degree. I am expected to do this thing. And yet I don't know anything. People get shocked when I tell them that I got my first job and I didn't know Git, and they're like, what do you mean you didn't know Git? And I'm like, well, that wasn't taught as my degree. No,
I've learned several programming languages, but Git wasn't something that I learned. And people find that really shocking. Yes.
And I remember one of my lecturers saying that the stuff I would learn in the first year would be outdated by the second year, and that was pretty much true. And
particularly in tech.
Yeah. We were told that things like XML was going to be the be end all of everything. JSON wouldn't wouldn't happen. And it was like nuts.
Yeah, it's a big thing of actually at Codebar why you'll notice in our tutorials that we don't have any frameworks or libraries. We actually try to stay away from them because, React is cool at the moment, but why go through all that effort of putting together a React tutorial when actually just have vanilla JavaScript ones to teach people, the basics of JavaScript. And then, we get people coming and wanting to learn React.
Yeah.
But, there are already great resources out there to help you learn that. We're here to teach. Our tutorials teach, no frameworks or libraries.
I love that. And I love that because on the How to Code Well channel here, we have all sorts of tutorials, but hardly any frameworks because of that reason. Because you're teaching the raw native skills that are very transferable across frameworks.
Yeah.
So you're not actually sort of like blinkered into a single framework and that's all you know. You don't learn the language through the eyes of the framework. You're learning the language, and then you can, if you want to, move to different frameworks later on. Yeah, so I'm totally with you with that. I totally dig that.
And it also varies on city as well. Like I found that like React is huge in London, but no one's actually learning that in Helsinki. And so it doesn't make sense for us to go and put this thing on our tutorial set.
Yeah.
When actually it's not necessarily as popular in a bunch of other cities as it is in London.
That's a very good point. I never thought of it like that. Yeah, because you kind of just go around thinking that everybody is doing everything that you've done, or you're working on the same sort of frameworks and stuff. But yeah, you're right. Everybody has different flavors all over the place. And I guess it does depend on location and requirements and all of that stuff. So you said that your students can come in from a very beginner level. How beginner is beginner?
Absolute beginner. You do not have to have written any code if you want to attend. Okay. The only thing we say is you just come with enthusiasm to learn. That's it. Because like I said, when you sign up, there's an option that says, I don't know, I'm a complete beginner.
Okay.
And I've had conversations with students who have come and I'm like, okay, do you have a rough idea? Is it like the front end of a website that you want to build? And they're like, yeah, I think so. And I'm like, cool, let's get you started on the very first HTML tutorial. But then some people come and they're like, no, I want to do a bit of data science. And I'm like, okay, well, let's not do HTML. Let's get you straight on Python, because some people don't want to do the HTML and CSS, some people do want to do Python. And even if they've never written any code before, that might be their preferred language that they want to learn. And so that's why, we have the option of, I don't know, my complete beginner. You don't even have to have a text editor, a coach can help you, get one set up, download one.
That's fantastic. So these are coaches that you can physically see and talk to and show your laptop to them, and they can give them advice and stuff. That's fantastic.
And even as a coach, you don't have to have this broad set of skills,
Okay.
When we do the pairing at the beginning, I'll say, I've got Kim and Peter both doing, intro to JavaScript. Can I have a coach? And then all the coaches that feel comfortable teaching that topic, they raise their hand, and then we pick one. I would never raise my hand for Ruby because I don't write Ruby, but I would for any JavaScript. So even as a coach, you don't have to know every single thing. You don't have to be an expert. We get quite a lot of students who come through and they're like, I think I'm ready to coach. And we're like, okay, well, why don't you just start coaching on the beginner HTML? They're quite a nice intro to coaching. The tutorials explain quite a lot. And then as you feel more comfortable coaching, you can then, start to experiment a bit more with what you feel comfortable coaching, because coaching is also terrifying, as is being a student.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. So am I right in thinking that the curriculum that you have is very loose and can be tailored towards the individual?
Yeah. So we have our tutorial set, which is 6 HTML and CSS, 6 JavaScript. There's a few Ruby, there's a few Python, there's an intro to command line, and there's 2 intro to Gits.
Okay.
However, if you want to do something else, there is another option that says other.
Right.
So when you are signing up, if you want to do something else, you pick that option, because some people might be doing, Ruby katas. And so, we have people, coming and doing Code Wars, Code Academy, and, that's completely fine. You know, we'll because you know, not everyone's going to like our tutorials, and we know that, and particularly people who are, you know, 6 stages into, you know, doing the JavaScript, you know, Code Academy, you know, they want to continue with those, and so it's completely fine to bring something else.
Sure.
The only thing we do say is that you can't bring any work that is part of a curriculum. So you can't bring any work that's part of a boot camp or part of a university degree, because that's really hard for coaches to come in. If you're, you know, 8 weeks into your boot camp and you've got a bit stuck, it's actually really hard in 2 hours for a coach to try and help you. So in that situation, we say, you know, go back to your boot camp, ask for help from them. However, you can still attend our workshops. You know, you can still be learning Ruby, JavaScript, something else at our workshops. You just can't get help with the curriculum work, because that's really hard for coaches.
That's a very good point. I guess also, it's not like you're going to be teaching something different, but you don't want to sort of like pollute their, I don't know, their learning structure that they're currently
particularly if it's for, you know, like you're about to handing an assignment at uni, and then, you know, this coach is doing something completely different to the way your lecturer expects you to do it. And then, you know, we'd feel awful if they went and like failed a module or something, because they were like, well, we went to Copa and they said that we should be doing it this way. And so, you know, still attend, still come and, you know, broaden your knowledge, but just not the curriculum work is all we ask.
And also, there's more than one way to solve a problem in programming. Yeah. And different developers have different styles of doing things.
Yeah.
And it would almost be confusing to the student having two styles conflict. Yeah. Okay. I haven't appreciated that before, but yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So, can we talk about where the code bars are actually located? Are they in sort of, I don't know, office blocks or restaurants or?
So generally they are tech companies,
right?
You know, companies will say, you know, we've got some space, you know, can we host you? And that's where we are. So, you know, depending on where they are, you know, so we have a few companies that actually help in multiple cities. Okay. So we have ThoughtWorks that help in London and Manchester. Right. For example, we have Twitter have hosted the London one and the New York one, as have Google. Cool. And so these tech companies do help actually at multiple of our chapters, because also when you're starting a new chapter, I'll be like, you know, it's starting in New York, and, you know, we've been to us too as well in London. So we'll be like, you've got a New York office. Can the New York office start hosting us? And they'll be like, yeah, sure. We'll put you in contact with our, you know, office manager in New York. And then they start hosting us. And then after you've run a few of them, you'll get other companies start to come in, and then offer up their space.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah. So what about things like co-working spaces as well? So
we have been to a few co-working spaces. The problem we've always had is that sometimes they can't do food and drink. So they've got a great space, but it then requires more work for us to try and find another sponsor to give us money to do food and drink. And it then means we have to try and handle money, which we can do. It just adds this extra layer of extra work for organizers. But yeah, we have, I think Berlin, there's a company in Berlin. I can't remember the name of their co-working space, but there's one that they go to quite a few times. In London, we've been to a few different WeWorks, but that's mainly through the company inside the building. So Charlotte Tilbury were one that they were like, you know, we're based in a WeWork, so they're going to host it at the WeWork. Right. However, it was Charlotte Tilbury as our host, not WeWork, but we were in a WeWork.
Organizational inception. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's really, really good. And how many on average do you think how many on average in terms of students are there per, you said you said that there was two students per coach. So how many people? So how many we get? The amount of people that attend are based on the host. So if someone emails us and they're like, you know, we want to host, you know, one of the first things we say is, you know, can you supply some food and drink? And then the other one is you tell us the numbers. Okay. So, you know, you say to us how many people you can host. We'll then do the maths of, you know, 2/3 students
1/3 coaches.
Okay.
And in terms of numbers per workshop, it really varies between chapters, actually, because London is a lot bigger. So they on average 60 people per workshop.
Okay.
Some of the smaller chapters are between 20 to 30 people. But, you know, that they plan to grow.
Yeah.
But, you know, it takes time, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we'll do the maths of, you know, how many students and coaches that is, and then that's then the number of spots that we release.
And is it an all day thing?
No, so the workshops tend to be in the evenings. So we'll really go into a company after work. So the organisers tend to go in from 6 o'clock. Right. And then we'll do half an hour of, you know, we'll talk to the company if there's anything that they need from us. You know, we'll set up our laptop, and then we ask people to attend from 6:30. Mm-hmm. We then have half an hour of food and drink. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll start the pairing process, which, again, depending on numbers, can take 5 minutes, it could take 10. Mm-hmm. And then people will work learning for 2 hours, and then we generally finish at 9 o'clock.
Wow, that's, quite a long evening then.
Yeah.
Quite a long evening.
And, you know, people can break if they want. You know, if halfway through they're like, you know, I need a 10-minute break, you know, they might stop and they might go and get like a drink, or, you know, some companies will give tea as an option, which is great. So, you know, some people, you know, people do have a break. You know, we're not like, you have to sit there for 2 hours, like, because, you know, that's mentally quite challenging. And so, you know, we do say, you know, if you want a break, you know, that's absolutely fine halfway through.
That's brilliant.
Some people don't know. Some people at 9 o'clock will be like, we're finished. And they're like, no, not yet. And, you know, a lot of feedback we get is, can the workshops be longer? And we're like, I don't think we can. Like, we can't go into these companies any earlier because people are at work. And, you know, 9 o'clock, you don't want to be also working until 10 o'clock. Like, that's also hard for the coaches, the students. Like, so we're just like, sorry, but 9 o'clock is a good time to finish.
Can anybody turn up to one of these things, or do they have to go through a particular process of sign up?
So there is a sign up process on the website. We use GitHub Auth. So one thing you do have to have a GitHub account. And then obviously students, we have an eligibility criteria because we are aimed at diversity. So women, non-binary, LGBT and ethnic minorities. There's no rigorous check with that. You know, we're not gonna, we don't make people like sign something online to agree that they fit that eligibility criteria. We trust people, you know, because also you can't necessarily always know from just looking at someone.
No,
so, you know, we base a lot of that on trust.
Yeah.
And then if a coach, we don't have the eligibility criteria with coaches because we wouldn't have any coaches. And then it's just sign up, and then, you know, chapters send out emails. So when a chapter releases a workshop, you know, they'll send out emails to all the people that are subscribed to that chapter, whether you're a student or coach or both. And then if you want to attend that workshop, you just click the RSVP button. If you don't, you can just delete the email.
Right. So I'm just thinking now. So let's say someone wanted to get into the industry but didn't have funds to do one of these university courses that cost so much money. Is that could they come to the to your Copa?
If they meet the eligibility criteria, yes, they absolutely can. One thing we're actually discussing at the moment is because the hard thing about Codebar is you do need a laptop. And actually, one thing we've said is actually that's instantly a barrier.
That is,
and, you know, it's kind of a bit hypocritical of us to be like, you know, we're trying to help everybody, but yet, wait, you do need a laptop. And so one of the things we are discussing at the moment is once we become a charity, we'll hopefully get a bit more money. And actually, could we try and find some way of maybe set aside X amount of money a year, depending on how much we get, where we could also then help students, if they don't have a laptop, actually maybe buy them a laptop. You know, we wouldn't say you can go and buy a Mac because that's way expensive, but, you know, one that could help them on their journey to being a developer.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really good. I didn't think of it like that. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah. You are totally right. It is a barrier of entry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a shame. Some
chapters I know do lend laptops. I think Peterborough have lent a few laptops to people who have been like, I want to learn to code, but I don't have a laptop. And many other chapters have done it. I've seen emails where they're like, someone's like, oh, my laptop is broke. Can I come along? And 100% of the time we're like, someone will lend you a laptop while you're there, so come along. And it might even be that the coach you're sat with will be like, you can borrow my laptop. I've lent my laptop during a few workshops to people, but they obviously can't then take my laptop away. No. So, they are kind of restricted that they can only do that during a workshop. But we do try to help people if they email us saying, I don't have a laptop.
Yeah. Okay, before we go any further, can you just say what the URL is to Codebar, just for anyone who's listening and want to go?
Codebar.io.
As simple as that. Codebar.io. Yeah. Okay, I'll put links in the descriptions, show notes, and the end screens and all that jazz. And yeah, this is a really fantastic initiative. I'm really digging this. I only discovered this through Twitter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And because I was scrolling through Twitter and someone was mentioning it. And I was, okay, that's interesting. And then that
were they mentioning a particular chapter, or was it just the generic London? It was
in that sort of hashtag 100 days of code, and they were saying that they had gone, and it was really useful. So then I just went down a typical Twitter rabbit hole, and then found you guys out.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So in terms of coaching. What does a coach need to have in terms of skills to be a coach?
I think the main thing is empathy. You have to understand what it is like to be a beginner. You can't go in and be like, how do you not know that? Or like, you have to have some form like empathy to know what it feels like to be a developer. And then, programming does obviously help as well. But some of the tutorials that we have are so well written that you don't have to be an expert in JavaScript to coach JavaScript. You don't have to be an expert in anything to be a coach. As long as you know more, that's okay. One thing we trialed recently was that I think makers were about to take on a cohort, so we had about a third of our workshop were people doing Ruby katas. Okay. And so I was like, right, it doesn't seem that useful to just pair people in the normal 2-to-1 ratio. And I also want to encourage students to help students, create discussions. And so we put all of these students in a room. We called it the Ruby room because they were learning Ruby. We put these 12 students in this room. And there were, I think we put like 4 or 5 coaches in there. So there were still coaches in there, but we wanted to try and encourage students to help students as well. Because, my background is different to yours. Even if we're both learning Ruby at the same time, I might have seen a different tutorial to what you've seen. So I might know the answer. Just because I'm a student, it doesn't mean that I can't help other students. And so we do try to encourage that as well. And like I've said, earlier, as a coach, only coach what you feel comfortable coaching. Don't ever be intimidated to think, oh my God, I'm going to need to teach, Python. I don't know Python. Like, that's totally fine. Don't put your hand up for that. One thing we try to do when we do the pairing is we do the most absurd requests first. Okay. So that we've got all of the coaches there. So, if someone comes along and they're like, I want to learn some Haskell. That's quite a niche thing. And so, one thing we do say with that is, have a backup just in case we don't have a coach. And then we'd say that, student first while we've got all of the coaches, because we know that most coaches will be comfortable doing, HTML tutorial 1. So we'll leave that till last. And then we'll try to say, the most obscure first. And then, just the main thing is just the empathy, understanding what it feels like. One of the things in our coach guide is, if a student asks you a question, don't just give them the answer. Show them how you would go about working out that answer, because that's way more beneficial than me just saying, oh yeah, the answer is blah. I'll be like, okay, here's how I would work that out. And you show them the process that you would go through Googling that problem. And that's way more beneficial than just giving them the answer.
Yeah. I love that. I love that answer. Empathy.
Or even if you don't know the answer, be like, do you know what, actually, I don't know the answer. You know, you're a human. You're not an expert. You know, you may not know the answer. And again, be like, you know what, I don't know the answer. Yeah. But actually, let's work it out together. And then also that every time a student has told me that's happened to them, it's relaxed them 10 times more because they think, okay, this person is human. You know, they're not some code expert who knows the answer to everything. And then it's situations like that that will just, as a coach, they can make you feel like just a bit more comfortable, hopefully.
Yeah. I really like that answer. Empathy is the key. It's not necessarily knowing every skill, you know, every technical thing, and showing how you go about finding the answer as well. So I've done a couple of courses for publication companies who've wanted clean as a whistle tutorials where it's a video, green screens behind me, and I am not making a single mistake.
That's scary.
Yeah. But I mean, for say, I don't know, half an hour's worth of footage, there's hours and hours and hours worth of trial and error and editing. Whereas when I go and do a live stream, it's obviously completely raw. There's all the bugs, there's all the issues, and half the time I get things wrong, and so I have to go off and search for things. And people dig that because that shows that you are solving the issue, and they're solving the issue with you, especially when there's a chat thing going on where you can actually communicate. So I really dig in that. Really,
it's like when you see a tech talk, you know, and someone's live coding and then there's a typo. And they're like, and you're on stage. And there's nothing worse than being on stage and something not working. And then, someone in the audience would be like, you've spelt that thing wrong. And then as a developer, I'm like, it happens to us all. I've been there, and you're stuck for half an hour being like, why isn't my code working? You realize it's because of a typo. And actually, I always remember those situations way more than someone who's live coding and it goes absolutely perfectly, because I'm like, I kind of respect that because I know they've probably practiced it a ton. But when I see, a simple typo, I'm like, thank God it happens to us all.
Yeah. I was thinking that, the squeaky clean courses kind of puts a sort of a false expectation on developers. Yeah. So, okay. So the coaches, do they get some sort of screening process to work out? No, we don't do anything like that. We do have the coach guide. So when you sign up, there's a bullet point list of things that we expect from a coach. Every attendee whose first time it is, in the back end, in our admin area, will know it's your first time because there's like a little paw print icon just before your name. So if you're a student or a coach, we'll know it's your first time. Right. And, particularly with a coach, we have a few people on board that we're like, okay, hey, welcome, it's your first time. Can you go and speak to so-and-so? And they'll give like a little brief rundown again of what we kind of expect from a coach. Don't touch someone's keyboard is one thing that we really, really try to advocate for. Like, we know it can be frustrating sat there and if someone's typing quite slow, but like, let them work it out. So don't be like, oh, there's this thing, take the laptop and start typing. Like, that's not useful at all. We have a bunch of things in that we do require, but we don't do any screening process because we just have so many people sign up. If we did a screening process for every single coach, I'd spend all my day doing that. But we do get feedback. So, if as soon as the workshops are finished, we send out the next day like a thank you email, and then we're like, if you have any feedback, let us know. And people can add a coach there. So many a times, I've seen really positive feedback from coaches, and I've screenshotted it and sent them in Slack. But also, reverse that if there is a bit of negative feedback, or not even negative, just been like, oh, my coach did this, like it would have been really helpful actually if they did that. I'll also give that back to the coach, because most people who come along wanting to coach also want to make their mentoring skills better. We have some coaches who are like, my next job is going to be tech lead, which is, mentoring people. And so, they may come to Codebar to
get better at that skill, and they really appreciate it when we're like, oh, by the way, the student, you know, probably didn't appreciate it when you did that particular thing. So we always do try to give feedback back to coaches.
It's very important. So then they can improve themselves and improve how they change the way they present the tutorial, the workshop. And I guess from your perspective, you're also mentoring the mentors in that sense. You're sort of guiding them as to how they should do these things.
Yes, which is quite terrifying. But, you know, I'm no expert. You know, I've been doing this for, you know, like 4 years. So I kind of know what makes a good mentor, what doesn't. And that's also good for me. You know, it's one thing I'm considering at the moment is, you know, getting a mentor for myself, because, you know, I'm in this position now where, you know, I'm running Copa. You know, there are 80, you know, volunteers running chapters. And, you know, I'm like, I've not done any training to, you know, help people. And so one of the things I'm considering at the moment is what I want to mentor, but the first thing I need to realize is what do I want from that mentor, so that when I have that first meeting with them, I'm like, here's what I want from you, so that they then understand that.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a fantastic job. You're doing a brilliant job. So. Yeah, you're doing brilliant. So how does one become a coach? Do they go through a sign-up process like a student would on the website?
Yep, so it's exactly the same process. You tick the I want to be a coach button that's on the homepage, and then you'll get taken to our page. You go through the GitHub auth, and then you get taken to another page where you create a profile. So students actually create the profile as well. And that's just, you know, your name, email, your preferred pronoun, because that goes on to all name badges. And just a little bio, so that, you know, we can get a bit of an idea about who you are. And then for the coaches, we actually ask you just to jot down your skills. So it might be, you know, that's when I then might write, you know, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, blah, blah, blah. So then actually we can just see a few of these things in the admin area when we're doing that pairing process.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. It sounds like it's a very well organized process, and it doesn't sound like it's got like many roadblocks, many barriers of entry. It's it's very, very good. I have heard of some other places, and there are sort of things that extra steps in order to do this. But that's brilliant. So what about hosting workshops? Is this where the sponsors come in, as in the actual bricks and mortar, where you're actually going to put the course? Yeah. So one thing we always try to do is we try to go to a variation of hosts. Right.
So that, you know, it's quite nice going to these different companies. You know, you speak to people inside that company about, you know, what it's like to work there. You know, we'll always let companies give a little 5-minute talk at the beginning about who they are, you know, what they do. Sometimes we'll be like, oh, you know, delivery, you know, we'd love to know how you do some of your like data viz stuff. Like, would someone mind giving like, you know, like a quick lightning talk at the beginning? And, you know, and they did, you know, they got one of the developers to come along, and then they got bombarded with questions afterwards. And we were like, right, no more questions. We need to start the pairing process and actually start coding. And yeah, that is, you know, if it wasn't for hosts coming forward, offering up their space, you know, we couldn't run Copa. But they are how we managed to run them, and where, you know, we send people, and numbers are dictated by them. And people do love helping us. You know, people do enjoy, and people love also showing off their office. They're like, we've got a great office, you know, we want to show this off. And, you know, likewise, I love nosing in people's office, you know, like I love going and being like, oh, I've never been to this host before. Like, I can't wait to go and see their office. You know, what was the one there was a company in London that I think it was Unruly. They had a climbing wall. And I was like, and I missed the workshop, and I was gutted. I was like, oh, I wanted to go to the climbing wall.
That's great.
And so, yeah, like I said, the main thing is you also get to just speak to people. So, like, you know, you also get to create this network of developers in all of these different companies, and, you know, you get to know what they're like. So you're like, that sounds quite a cool place to work, and then you'll keep an eye out. So when you see a job a job advert from them, you'll be like, I've been there. I've heard that it's a great place to work. I'm going to apply to that job.
That is fantastic. That is giving a level of exposure that is you just don't normally get,
Yeah.
You can't, as someone who's learning code, just go rock up to Deliveroo or anywhere else and just say, do you mind if I just sit in your office for a few minutes whilst I try and work through some tutorials? Yeah.
The person who was there recently, she was the hiring manager. So, what better person to speak to than being like, I'm getting into the tech industry. What's your interview process like? Like, what type of thing would you expect from someone like me looking for my first job? And, and this is the person that's doing the hiring. You're talking to them directly. You're not reading some just job spec that, there's this thing when you see a job spec and you're like, oh, I can't do 100% of those things. I'm not going to apply, and that's a thing, but a lot of the time when job specs are written, they're writing for the ideal candidate, so you don't have to know every single thing. And then by speaking to these hiring managers or, the other developers or the tech leads or, all of these people at the company, you realize that, I could apply for that job actually. And actually so many people at Copa have got jobs from companies that we've been to.
Wonderful.
When they see that job spec and they're like, yeah, I know that person there. They say it's a really good place to work. Like, yeah, I'm going to apply. Or, their interview process isn't that scary. Like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And it just breaks that barrier between this company that you think is completely unrealistic, that, you're never going to work for. Like Twitter, Google,
That's great.
Actually, I've been in their office, it's feasible for me.
Yeah, you are humanizing the companies. I mean, I just thinking back to my experience of all the jobs that I've been involved with when I was a full-time dev back in the day. My first ever time seeing the company I was going to work for is the interview.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have had that sort of like gentle process where I was learning at their house in their building, that's eating exactly their food. Is, right?
If you've been to that office 4 times because you've been to a meetup, and it might not be Copa, London is generally really good in New York and a lot of the chapters that we have, if you've been to that office 3-4 times already, you'll also feel a lot more relaxed going in there than if you're a job interview because, you know where the toilet is.
Yes.
Tiny little things like that. Like, even the journey to get there. Yeah. You don't have to have that cognitive barrier of, right, how do I get there? Stress. Am I going to get lost? Am I going to be late? Like, there's nothing worse than that feeling of like going somewhere that you don't really know. Like, actually, if you've already been there, that there's a coffee shop around the corner, let's say, that you might go and chill in for 15 minutes just to calm yourself down. Like, like you go in and you're like, where the toilet is, little things like that like you'll then go into that job interview feeling a lot calmer if you've already been there 4 times. Yeah,
that is a very good point. Very, very good point. This is a wonderful thing you're doing. I've said it before on this channel. I'll say it again. I'm probably going to be saying it a lot often with other guests on, and I wish I knew of this when I was starting out, because this is fantastic.
It really isn't just me though. Like it's all of the coaches that turn up, it's the host companies, the organizers. Like Copa isn't just one person, it isn't just us 7 directors, it really is like a huge group effort from every single person involved.
That's fantastic. Is there anything else that you want to discuss, mention, talk about, promote?
We do have other workshops. Yeah. So one thing we do is if there is something that you want to learn, you can organize a workshop that will run that thing. So we have 2 types of different events that happen at Codebar. We have our normal programming workshops, which are, you sign up, you do this tutorial. Then we have this other event type where they're one-off events. So we had someone who was like, you don't really have Android and iOS workshops. Can I start running them? And every single month last year, she ran one of these workshops. One month it would be iOS, the next month it would be Android, iOS, Android. And then she run these workshops. There's another event called the Monthlies, which is a speaker series. So a big thing with tech events and talks is that you listen to these talks, but they expect you to have this certain amount of knowledge already. You know, they'll use terminology that's confusing. And we realized that there wasn't a thing where these talks were for beginners. They were for people coming into the tech industry. And so a team of people started that. So that's called Copa Monthlies, which is the last Monday of every month. Right. And then that's, again, London-based, but Brighton have just started it. Brighton just ran their first Brighton Monthlies, which is this speaker series. We then had someone who was like, okay, these Codebar workshops are cool, but what happens if I can't attend one? Can I start running some virtual ones? And so she started running these virtual workshops. Right. And that's run by Charlotte. She's another director. And you know, the same person who ran the monthly, she was like, I'd love to run an event where people are practicing tech tests. Okay. So she ran this one-off event that was called Demystifying Tech Tests. You know, someone also wanted to do a panel. They were like, can we just do this like breaking into the tech panel? So, you know, we had 4 people in this panel who all come from different backgrounds. We had someone who come from a boot camp, someone who was self-taught, you know, someone who came from a degree. And then I think we had a hiring manager as well. And we got loads of questions from Twitter, from the audience. And then it was just these 4 people answering these questions. And then people in the audience just, you know, absorbing all of this knowledge. And again, even with that, like no 2 people's answers was the same. You know, one person, I said one thing and then this other person's like, oh yeah, but however, I did it this way. So a big thing with Codebar is, you know, if there's something that you want to run in your area, you can just like let us know, and then we will make that happen if it's something that you want. That's good. You know, I think we had someone do an intro to React Native recently. You know, I think Helsinki are doing some gaming ones. Like, you know, like you don't just have to stick to, you know, we have this structure of workshops in place, which, you know, because they've been run so long, they're not easy to run, but there's this, you know, you get into the motion and it's, you know, fairly straightforward, which is why then people are like, oh, it'd be really cool if we could actually do this thing or this thing and this thing. And then that's why now there is this other type of event that people can run, and people do.
And so the virtual events, can people who can't attend a normal workshop, can they attend that virtual event? Yes. So the first one is coming up, and that's headed by Charlotte. Every Sunday at 9:30 a.m. GMT is when, and she's using something called Discord, where you can sign up, and then it's all going to be done online. Excellent. Yeah. So that's really cool. And she was like, well, you know, what do people think about me heading this thing? And we're like, that's awesome. Like, do it. So Discord is the tool that is going to be used for communication. Is that right? Yep. Because I think that's got is it a voice chat thing in there? Yeah, so I think that's how she's going to do it. I think, I'm not sure how she's going to, I don't know whether she'll have the same structure of like 2 students with 1 coach. I think initially it's going to be a bit of trial and error to see like what things work, what things don't. Exactly like we did right at the beginning with normal workshops, and realised that 2 students and 1 coach was way better than, you know, a teacher with 20 students. But yeah, she's starting that every single Sunday. Now, one question that has just popped into my mind that I'm going to be asked in the comments is, how much does this cost? And it's free, isn't it? Yes, every single event we run is free. We will never, ever charge anyone to attend one of our events. And that is a very important point I want to just home. It is free. Yes, free. It's free. Yes, free. It's absolutely free. Yeah. Because again, like if we started charging people, that's a barrier. That's not what we're about, you know. So yeah, we would never ever charge. And on the other side, it's working with volunteers. So you have a pool of volunteers. Yeah. Yes. Every single person involved in Copa, from the organisers, you know, the coaches, the students, even us directors. Every single person is a volunteer. Excellent. Well, Kimberley, that's fantastic to get you on the show and talk about Codebar. Before we go, can you just say again what the URL is? Codebar.io. And what's the Twitter handle? @Codebar. Awesome. And then we have chapter-specific ones, so it'll be like @Codebar NYC, you know, @Codebar Brighton. Most of the chapters have their own Twitter handle, but the main one is @Codebar. Wonderful. Well, I'll put all the links that we've mentioned in the show notes below, on the screen at the end, and in the cards and so forth. But thank you ever so much for coming on the show, Kimberley. That was I find it incredibly interesting to listen to people like yourself who have come from your background in terms of degree, and then traveling and programming, and then volunteering, and now being, one of 7 directors at an institute that is helping so many other people improve their skills. It's so incredible to hear. So thank you ever so much and you must be incredibly busy, so thank you for sharing your time with me.
No, thank you for having me and letting me talk about Copa.
No worries. It's been a privilege. And to everyone else, thank you ever so much for watching on the YouTubes or listening on the podcasts. Thank you ever so much. Happy coding, everyone. I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.